Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we are painting a courtyard of a mosque again. And this time we've got a zoomed in version, a zoomed in segment, and I'm interested in that composition development. I've got a second picture just as a reference point, just to show you which part we're taking in, just to show why there is a different size arches or how maybe other shapes are, what's happening in the corner. But sometimes it's just nice to see what's further out. So I had both pictures, and also it's to show how we can build up the composition. So if you have a wider view, excuse me, how can we crop the picture? Yeah, could it be cropped shorter? So if I'll use my tissues here, maybe more like that as a wider space. Could it be cropped that way? Yeah. Could it be cropped? Yeah, maybe something other way somewhere else. So I did like the darkness of the column. I do like that big shadow at the front and then a beautiful light behind. So let's have a look how we can build that view. So I'll put this image away. I've got a little bit of similar background color for just testing some of the colors here. So I'm going to start with sketching using the tips. And I will use my Payne's Gray and Violet. Now, my colors are on the palette before I move on further. Group of warm colors, Naples yellow, cadmium yellow, cadmium orange or cadmium red, whichever you might have, ochre, magenta, and violet. I've got quite a bit of white, and then I have cerulean and ultramarine and some Payne's Gray. If you don't have Payne's Gray, any other black will be fine as well, as we'll be mixing it with other colors. So I'm going to start with using a little bit of violet and Payne's Gray. Just want to make a darker violet version, making it quite runny. And let's start looking at our composition. Now, first of all, the big column. Beautiful shape, but I'm not sure if I want to have so much of it, okay? On the other hand, if I make it too narrow, it might be too much if I'll just use this picture. If I'll make it too narrow, it almost looks like it hasn't got enough darkness. So it's maybe something like this. I'm looking at that width, almost halfway through of the width of the column. So let's plan it and perhaps think about it when we place it in our composition, because this is our almost like a frame. Just put in a vertical line, and the column, the base of the column starts somewhere here. So let's have, I'm not going to do a perspective on the edge of the plinth here. All I'll do so far is just to put its width for now, because we can decide on the details, or that lovely relief of them and the rings of the column. Maybe we'll think about them in a moment later. But how far do I want this base to come out? So if this is the column, and it's only, again, if I need to move it, it's fine. But I want to think of the rough angle of those rings here, and then how much space is left to see the corner. So maybe I'll need to move that. So then the whole composition doesn't have just a narrow darkness, doesn't have a lot of it, yeah, but it's just got almost like a frames in, so it's not just a vertical, it have that little horizontal entrance as well on it as well here. It also looks like a nice shadow, perhaps for later. Okay, And now let's have a look at our arches. Now again, we have quite a lot of space for the floor, so we can stay with the photograph and have quite a lot of floor. It almost takes half of the picture. So my suggestion is to bring that floor slightly lower. And perhaps that's another reason why I had the photograph, just in case if we do need any more information for a little bit above the arches or a little bit of something of just light, we might just refer to that. So I'm planning to have my wall, not the columns, but perhaps the wall starting somewhere, maybe somewhere here. And I can put a horizontal line as a starting point, but what's going to happen with perspective, I'm going to have a very, very gentle slant. So we're only talking about maybe something like this. Okay, it will be noticeable, but it's not a huge angle. Yeah, we're talking about a couple of degrees. Okay, and I'm going to double check if that's going to be low enough. But that's my back wall. What about the light? You know, the big shadow here at the front. So if I were to place the shadow, give that how much light, where's the shadow is going to be? What's going to happen to these two lines? Not going to be quite parallel, but they're going to slightly widen up on the right. Again, that's just gently that perspective is working. So if those lines meet somewhere, there will be that vanishing point there. Okay. Again, I'm still thinking, do I need to move them or not? Then I want to place my other key elements before I do that. Another two elements are my arches. So if I'll plan my central arch, I can adjust everything around it. And the central arch, ideally, we can start from the left-hand side because it's a corner of our building here. Yeah, the corner of the courtyard. So then everything here, we're going to have one point of perspective there, and everything here, just I'm going to have a tiny bit of it. It's going to be going the opposite way. So I'm going to start from that corner, looking from that width of the arch, another one. Maybe let's make this one slightly narrower. Okay, let's make this one tiny bit wider. We'll see how much space we've got. So if I'll just plan the widths first, okay, that's about the same. Okay, by the time we do the columns, widths as well. Let's see something perhaps there. But again, until I put my arch, I wouldn't know if it's enough or if it's too wide space. Maybe I need to move things about. So approximately there. And I also want to see that proportion of the beautiful arch. Now, because we dropped everything down, we can have the tall space, but I actually don't know if I'm going to fit it in. I think because we also narrowed the shadow, the column and the shadow, we widen up the space we can have here. So I'm going to draw the arch shape I want. Okay, so somewhere here, if I'll stay with this corner, if I'll draw my arch approximately just to see it's elongated enough, not too narrow or not too wide. Mainly for me, I think not too wide. Okay. And then I can say, okay, whatever is left, I'm going to use left and right. Or if I need to make it less symmetrical, I think that would be okay because this arch is going to be a bit narrower. And this arch will come somewhere here. Okay. So if my arch would have been not fitted or not long enough or not, I could extend it Yeah, I think I should be okay. Maybe just tiny bit extended for me. So once I've done my shadow column, a rough floor level, a rough arches, then I can start moving. Not gonna do anything else. I'm gonna look at those elements. Can I move them about for the better view, for the better position, for the what will work better? And we're looking here at the spiral composition. So we'll have some, perhaps some pattern on the floor, some extra darkness on the shadow, and it will take us on this darkness. We'll have that lovely change of connection of the roofs here. Okay, we'll have that little junction. Just going to place it just to show what's how the spiral is going to be following. We'll have some interest points inside of our arches. Okay, we're going to follow the shadow. We're going to follow the light. Maybe have a figure. Got a figure here, but maybe I'll place the figure here so it will follow through and then maybe stay on my lights somewhere else in there. So that's our spiral composition. I think I might just drop my arch a little lower, move my shadow, move my light, and make a tiny bit more space above. Okay. So by doing that visual walk, okay, if you've done, you might have a slightly different format for your canvas or your board. If it's feels fine for you to what you sketched earlier, you don't have to change. Just look what feels right. But the perspective could be applied. Okay, and then you have that. Perspectives will be applied the same. Just gonna double check my shapes here. That lovely elongated arch. And then the steps of the capitals will give me that change of shape. Okay, that very much oriental feel. Okay. And the other side column is a tiny one. So it's almost like two columns in one here. And that shape is much shorter. So let's just work into that approximate size. I'm also straight away picking up its width because it becomes the width of my column here. So then it's a nice chunky column. By the time I'll do my lines tidying, it will fall into places. Okay. It's actually this one is a inner line. So okay, this might be my outer line. There we go. Usually the outer line is a little bit darker, but okay, that's better. Let's just check the symmetry. Let's just check the symmetry here. Okay. So ideally, I love that dark line, but to check the symmetry, if I just remove it, that's what I was looking at. Okay. I was looking at the silhouette of the darkness at the back. That's why I needed that line. Okay. That's fine. Got it. Checking my own thoughts. as I'm proceeding. Okay. And I'm going to continue. If you can spot the corner somewhere here, that might be a good line for us to change color. Okay. So arches, ideally we do the outer line to see what's symmetrical. So that's my middle of the arches. So I've done that one was an outer line. And then the width of it will come in. Okay, and that's, in this case, we see it as a silhouette and then it disappears. We can't see it after the, a little bit after the middle. And the same here. Now I can, there's an outer pattern here, but the width of this capital on the column is here as well. And again, it stops. I'm just going to double check its height. I think it's gone a tiny bit lower. Now, if our floor leaning tiny bit down this way, the arches, the arch on the right is going to be tiny bit more higher, just exaggerating its height with my brush. So that's just to show that perspective. So I'm correcting these bits here as well. It's need to go, if I were to continue the perspective line, approximately half of for my arch. Okay, that's another way of comparing. That's where the middle is going to be. Almost the same, half and half, because this one is closer to us, it's going to be tiny, tiny, tiny bit bigger. We're only talking about very minuscule proportion. Okay, and this width is gonna come up somewhere here. I'm gonna do my column here. My widths for the arches are a little bit wider than needed because my lines are so wide, but when we start doing it with color, we'll get it all sorted, it'll be all fine. Okay, and my columns are slightly further away from that wall. They just in front of it, so we can see for that space. That's probably a good couple of meters, yeah. Maybe a little bit less, but overall. And there's also step. Don't know if you can see it or not. Actually, got my mom and dad sitting there, waiting for me to go and explore the place. So enjoying and taking the view. Right, so this one is coming a bit more here. And that step is just below it. So I can do a parallel line, maybe just a drop of a line. We can't see it as much in darkness, only because I've been there and I can see Dad got is sitting with his legs over that step. So that reminds us there, but I think I'm going to move Dad. I hope Mom's not going to mind. And I think I'm going to put some somewhere here. Okay, maybe Mom will be sitting there. Maybe there wouldn't be anybody. I haven't decided. Quite like that darker spot. There is some sort of, I think, some sort of storage box at brown. But I think if I were to turn it to people, maybe there will be both of them walking there or standing there or looking there. Might just give me that perspective of shapes. Okay. Maybe even too big. Otherwise, they will be giants. Maybe a little smaller. There we go. Maybe something there. And then the grandness of the space becomes more viable. Okay, an exciting part of the painting is those beautiful shadows and the light and the lovely arches, kind of the arched gallery under the columns. That would be fantastic. So that one develops that way. This one develops the other side, the left-hand side develops that side, but we can't see any other lines, even from this side, because it's just gone, yeah? There is an entrance there, and the next kind of line we would have seen, or the column is somewhere behind, so we don't need to worry about it. What we will see is a little metal bar here, which will have a gentle angle if we were to include it. So it's not straight, it's just gentle angle. That one is a strong angle, yeah, that will be a similar one here. Maybe even a dome starting, if we've got space for it. Maybe it will be just a pattern of light and dark, that's a round line. That will be something continuing, almost like this shape. I have drawn that line only for reference, so I'm going to remove it. Okay. Can put a little pattern around the arch just to gain that parallel line. Sometimes drawing too many lines, you lose the shape, so I often do it as a block of color. So probably if we don't want to get mixed up, don't put it in. Or make it very diluted or light, so then you see the more important shapes stronger. I'm just double checking that my column is not falling. Okay, we don't want falling columns. It's quite a chunky one. I think it will go narrower afterwards. Okay, and let's have a look tiny bit on the ceiling behind. If we were to draw an arch, so we've drawn one arch here, okay, in that side of the wall. We're going to have from this column an arch going the same way if it would have been another this side of the wall. Let's actually start with this one. Yes, so that's the wall. There's another arch going up. We can't see part of it, but then we see that stripy part, which is almost a parallel, but a higher version of this wall of the arch. So that's a stripy edge, making it extra dark for no particular reason. I think I just picked up some extra dark paint, and it will stop. Again, if we see this metal bar, it stops above the capital of the column. So if my capital of the column is here, you can almost even continue that line. Okay, so that's where these lines, these perspective lines here or there will be important. So that one's going to be here. Just need to double check. Is it somewhere roughly halfway through my space? Maybe a little bit closer to the left. It will just give me the width, how much narrow or how much wide the space is going to be. Okay, so maybe a little bit more here. I'm going to put the stripes so I can see it a little bit more clearer. And it just stops. Okay. And there is another one. Looks like little step ladders. So that one goes somewhere here. A little bit more similar line. Let's have a look how much space we've got between the arch that might be wider here, a bit more narrower here, because we've seen it from a different angle. These ones are closer to us, so that's changes, so we can't see all of it. Maybe a little bit more here. There we go, somewhere there. I think that's gone a little too low. And let's go all the way to that bit. This goes in the middle of that, so it doesn't go any further. Okay. And also, if I were to put a line across between those arches, I'm going to have an arch between them. That will be like on the back wall, that will be the arch at the back. So that's what that pattern is all about. And there will be another arch going that way, but we can't see where it's finishing. So that's what those little triangles, and then some of them have more flat plaster or more pattern. Okay. Then we can also see just tiny bit of round ceiling, round pattern on the ceiling, if we can fit that in. I think by the time I'll put more detailed color, it will be just enough to see tiny bit of the darkness in there. Just tiny, tiny, tiny bit. If you can't fit it in, if you've got reasonably small surface, don't worry about it. Also, I can compare my straight bars and that almost a rhomb here, got that shape here, one bar, that one continues there, these ones are here. That's our geometry going. I'm just using a few supportive lines, so we don't have to have that one. Smudged. Okay. So we're only doing it because I'll say, right, let's paint this chunk in one color and the same color and the same color, the same color. Then you're almost just painting by numbers in those spaces. Okay. And let's find a little bit of our shadows, our lights. Of what we can see, that beautiful silhouettes. So I'm going to start looking around this column, just looking for that shape, just looking for that quite a not symmetrical curvature. Okay, because we've got angled light and angled shadows. And I'm looking here for column with its very much enlarged capital. Okay, it again, it's not quite symmetrical. This one all stretched out just above here. Okay, this is more supportive line again for me to think about. Okay, maybe a little bit less wobbly. Just a little more leaning in. My wider lines. Okay, that's better. There's probably some sort of softness. I don't know if there is a tree, there is. Why is that softness prevented to have a sharp shadow? If we wanted to keep a sharper shadow, I can't see why not. Okay, and it stops sorry, those shadow stops at the back of our wall. And this one just continues a little further. Okay, that's when I'll see if the shadow contour hits the person right in the head, or maybe just an off center. So that's something again we'll look, and that will be quite beautiful to see. A little, maybe that will stay where it is, but I might see a little bit of light. So that tells me I'm happy with my black column here at the front where it's going to stop. Okay, that's definitely gives me that contour. Okay, anything else? Yep, a little bit more. We have a lovely box, religious ornament on the wall. So I'm going to put a box, and I think maybe that's why that shadow is smudged, because it's bordering that area, and it's got layers after layers of almost like framed within the stone, some simplified pattern, and it's going to have quite a narrow, you need to go higher, no, I think that's okay, quite a narrow pointy top, and almost like a space for a soldier to stand in or a statue to stand in. It's almost like a little inner space, but I think it's a religious corners, little areas. Okay. And all I've got left is to do perhaps my doors. And they're just tiny bit hiding behind the columns. I'll do them approximately, mainly heights. My columns are at the moment quite wide and not perfectly identified. But if I find an overall height of the door, probably less than halfway through than my super tallest column. Okay, this one's gonna come up here. Okay, maybe the door is going to be, if I'll put a really dark color, a really strong violet with a bit of black, so then it will remind me. If I need to trim the length of it or move it a tiny bit more, I think it will be fine. But if I approximately place it, same here, and a super dark contrast will give that beautiful repetitive almost pattern again, as we've been doing in a lot of our mosque paintings recently. And there is a little ornament above it, and a little almost like a frame, door frame around it. That's lovely. I think it's metal work there, or stone and inserted with some tiles. I can't remember now. I need to have a look a bit more closer. But it has that bluish, grayish, lovely hint of color. So that's how we're going to interpret it as an extra color. Okay, it's light, and then okay, maybe a bit high even. Some of them. You can see perhaps part of it here as well. We'll see how our column will shrink, and then we'll see how much we can see as well. You can see another tiny little sub arch within my tiny little, well, within my small arch on the left. It's one of those little arches looking like steps. Curved steps. Okay, here we go. Okay, it's just loads of other things going on. That will be enough. Right, my shadow line has dried lighter, so partially lost it. So I'm just going to redraw it here. Okay. Good. That's all good. Right, and another thing I've forgotten is my column now, right at the front. Well, now we definitely, if we need to move it, we should move it by now. If we're keeping it where it is, we can use its silhouette to create the ovals, perhaps just rough parallel semicircles. Yeah, those circles, those parts here, can make little adjustments as we go. There's a color which might have some widths, which might have some three-dimensional round shapes, which will have some hollow shapes. Doesn't matter, just a repetition of lines, slightly lighter and darker ones will do the job. And we have found the furthest away point and the vertical line for it, so that's great. And what we'll do next, if we used, kind of looked at this wall at the back, and if we would have found our vanishing points using all these lines, this line, this corner, okay, would follow the same vanishing point. So if I were to follow it somewhere here, somewhere here, so that will give me somewhere around here. And that other side at the back will be parallel with my wall at the back, just gentle corner. So it's not straight a horizontal line, it's got that corner. And if I've got a bigger width and I don't want it, I can extend the base of my column. Or I could have just had some extra space there. There's nothing wrong. It doesn't have to be standing right on a tip. Or I can move that line a little bit higher if that's, so that got that box it stands on, that base it stands on, could be adjusted for us as well. And this one just drops down. So you've got that lovely entrance. So maybe we'll do the entrance this way. This might be followed by light, it might be followed by the line, and still come in the same direction here. So a spiral, come in that direction. So that roundness is still here. If I wanted to stay here, this way, I'll put some of my floor directions a little more exaggerated in darkness, so then we follow floor lines a little bit more visually. We'll see when we start applying the color, I'll make that final decision. It's going to be going one way or the other. Okay, and before we stop with the drawing, I just want to make my column much darker. I'll use one of my flatter brushes. And the column has probably that lovely dark violet. We use violet with some black at the top, but perhaps a bit more ultramarine than violet at the bottom. So I'm going to go reasonably runny paint. Just want to block it. At the same time, it makes my surface quite oily. It doesn't matter if it will be oily or not. either versions will be good. Okay, and as I'm going lower, I'm going to pick up some ultramarine without washing my brush. It's quite a transparent layer, so that blue will start mingling against the violet, and by the time we'll add a little bit of white later, it will give us the blue. It will show us the blue better and will show us a bit more light, a bit more in between tones. I'm going to make this shadow here. Maybe that's my shadow. I'm standing here. We'll see. I'll see if I'll leave it there or not yet. Haven't decided. Quite like the darkness of it next, and then maybe just stopping. That gives it quite a nice entry point as well. Lovely. Right, now let's have a look at our tones and our colors. Now, a dark violet background is appearing as a medium darkness so far, the medium tone so far. Our column is looking nice and dark. So now let's find some lights. And as we always do, we're going to go the most lightest, straight away, perfect kind of highlight. I will paint the lighter tones, but I'm going to leave that allowance to make it even lighter. So now I'm going to start using my oils. I'm going to start with some white and some ochre. Okay. And I think if I test it as it is, just white and ochre, and place it on my board, I'm going to start placing it here as well. So I want to see the range of colors as it's coming through. And let's just place it here. We see some texture on that wall, and perhaps by putting this current color and then lighter colors on top will give us that texture. Now, if I've got the arch and I painted the arch relief, it's not inside of the arch, it's the outer kind of decorative area. Sometimes it's lovely to leave a dark mark, a dark outline, just a narrow version of it, so you can just see that hint. If you haven't drawn it, just leave the color of the background, perhaps. If you just paint it all together evenly, that's fine as well, because the main color we're looking and that shape we're looking is the outer light of the arch. And that's going to get narrow. So my wider strokes of the brush could be now seen. Okay. And then perhaps correct it at some point. Okay, that's for now there. So the darker background allows us to have those lovely textures, subtextures of the color, subtextures of previous layer. So I just want to establish, probably will add a bit more coolness of color, a little bit more warmth of the color to that after, but just want to establish some of the basics. Can also use tiny bit of extra oil if I don't want to make it too thick. You can go quite opaque and maybe not overly big chunks of paint, kind of medium paste consistency, or you can dilute it a little so it's much more runnier, much more easy to apply, and also it means that you will see more texture behind, and your color, you're painting with now will be gently darker when it dries. Okay, so that's on some of that, and then this one could come. Again, that just might show the texture of the wall. It might just show those imperfections of the masonry. But that's the shape. We can see very yellowish so far. We just wanted to see some of that connection of light. I just put a little bit of it, that color on the column. Just a little, to see how it will smudge with the violets we sketched with, just almost as pre-planning for later. Okay, I think this could go a little closer as well. They are in one line. So that's the same wall. And the left wall, I'm going to use Naples yellow. Can use, I want to make a slightly lighter wall. Or I could have used a bit of extra white with my ochre. Naples yellow will have slightly more yellow in it. It's almost ochre and cadmium yellow with some white together. So I'm just softening it so it does come out easily. Okay, if I'll place it next to my previous color, I can see that small change of color in color and small change of in darkness. And get a straight-ish line next to the dark column, big block. Painting by numbers. This is one surface, this is another. Yeah, just thinking of that, those spaces. Maybe use the side of your brush to give you more precise, narrower strokes. Sometimes the thicker paint you use, the easier to apply it more precisely. And we're going to have quite a bit of light here. Let's use a little more of this color to join this little structure here. And it's almost like a merge of columns, of levels. I'll have a tiny bit of highlights on it at some point to make more of a statement of it, but this shape needs to be vertical. It's gone a bit wide for me. I will shrink it as I'll start painting the shadows. Okay, I'm better with that. And the light we have on our columns is on the right-hand side, center and right-hand side, and also think this central column got just marble texture, or the stains of weathering. On one side we've got more lighter pattern or texture, as well as some extra light. Okay. If you're struggling to paint a narrow shape for the column, just paint it as you paint, trying to get some straight straighter strokes because that's will give you that strength, but you can always shrink it by painting darker color next to it. But that line, the narrow line, is always harder to make than a wider shape. This column got darker color, but even if I were to paint it of a similar color, that will be fine. I think I'll, for now, can add a little ochre for it, or could have just painted it the same. I think it will be fine for now to keep it together. And interesting enough, I can see part of that step, that marble step where my mom and dad sit. It's got that light here, but then it stops. Not because there's no light, but the marble doesn't shine anymore. Maybe different stone, slightly different pattern on it, slightly different shade and color. So I might want to keep it. There's might just have a little gap. Might have that connection. I think that will be quite nice. And again, we'll evaluate and compare it. I think it also feels right because there are loads of shadows in this area, and I haven't done obviously the beautiful light on the floor. Maybe that will lead us to the light on the floor. If I were to wipe my brush and just add more oil and just dilute the color we just used, so it will start appearing much paler. Just for now, tone-wise, it will start getting that connection with light. And what I've done, without even thinking, I've almost sketch shaded with my brush using the direction of my perspective. So these are my lines of perspective, yeah? So I've shaded in the same way, and it's naturally now started to look quite exciting. I'll just make it a little sharper on the border. I've shown you the lines coming further, but actually I think they're best not to be standing out so strongly. Might smudge them out. Okay, some of them. And also by doing that shading with a brush rather than doing long lines. Long lines just often become, oh, that's a little bit one angle. That's a bit more of the curvature. That's not quite a straight line. When the shading direction of application of color tone, it flattens that surface. Also going to use a similar color for the top here. I could have mixed a little bit of violet with my ochres, but for now, I think, just to make a slightly darker version here, maybe just to put a little more space that is a different material made out. Okay, this wall is actually continues a little further in, so I could have put a little stronger color further. Okay, it's maybe quite nice, and there isn't any dark lines. If there are any lines, I think they're light lines because they're almost like white mortar. Okay, maybe that will be plenty here as well. Okay. Before we move on to the other colors, for example, the beautiful light on the back wall and some lovely warmth of the spaces under the arches, I want to put a couple of lighter strokes on my wall above the arches, just to see how much lighter it could go. So if I use some white and Naples yellow and just place perhaps even the stripes pattern or just a hint of it. Okay, I think my stripes are a little wide, but it's more of the light rather than particularly accurate shape. So in a way, I prefer to have that pattern different. Okay, it's almost just unites the light a bit more. Okay, that's quite nice. And also if I place, some areas will stay because of the stains on the wall will stay as they are, but others, I think somewhere here might have some extra light. Maybe around, instead of a darker line, will be that light as an outline of the arch. Maybe just an offset as a shape. Okay, that feels better. And I might just put a little bit more light on this arch as well. You can see more of a whitish outline for the outer pattern of the arch. Same like here. Same like some extra light will come on our columns. So we started breaking it down. Now it's a bit early for details, but I just want to see some contrast. A little bit more contrast of that light. Okay, here it doesn't have as much. Doesn't have as much boldness of white, but as we're going higher, I think that boldness is stronger. And I might need to put a real chunk of paint to see it. Quite runny paint for me. The previous layer. Okay, that's where some of these chunks will come in. And I'll just stain them by putting a liner around them, almost like tucking them in. When I'll have the arch done, darker tones will be shown it as well. Also want to check what that highlight's going to be on my column here. Okay, just a little check, just a little check. Perhaps even a check for the bottom there. Okay, so now how many more darknesses of tone I can go further in? Otherwise my spaces will become extremely dark if I don't compare the possible range of darknesses. And while we're here, I might just do a little arch over this arch. Okay. Maybe this space should have been a bit lower. It doesn't matter, I'll just play with that shape a bit more. Not a big deal, we can drop it down or even keep it slightly different. I think when the violet, I'll have some violet on my brush, I'll amend that a bit more. Okay. Now I want to go for these lights. That beautiful orangey warmth of the wall. So if we used ochre earlier on, I want to use now some white with cadmium yellow and cadmium red or cadmium orange, depends which one you have. Okay, so that's red is quite strong, so maybe a little more white and a little bit more yellow. Or if it's too much in this pool of color, let's just take it elsewhere on my palette. Might even check it against my colors. I should have done that one with other colors. So that's doesn't look red at all, but has that little bit of orangey color. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not appearing here, but on the palette, that's a true color, how I see it, but not here. Not on the screen on this smaller sample. Right, so let's place it in here. Beautiful. I'm exaggerating that warmth, almost Van Gogh-y orange, Van Gogh-y yellow in color. And again, I can put a little more extra light in it once the block is done, once the shadows are done. I'll evaluate it. It will be easier to put a lighter tone on top, but that warmth of the cadmium red will have a striking effect. Okay, and that's when we can again look for the shape or make it slightly bigger if you're still not sure. And we can shrink it with the outer color when we get to that. Okay. And the opposite side, now I can decide on how much space the column is going to take. Okay, by accident trimmed part of my door frame. The less oil you have now on your brush, I mean as liquid oil, paint-wise, the more you'll have, the better. The runny liquid solution should be present in very small quantities. I'm trying to paint that shape as flat as I can, so we see it as a shape rather than three-dimensional effect. And again, oops, that's ochre. I need yellow and I need cadmium red. A little extra white. Okay, still in the same color, that's good. And let's paint this shape as well. Maybe a little bit more orange into orange. So let's have a tiny bit more yellow. I keep topping up the color from the palette, because then I can press on my brush to get the squeeze the chunks of paint out, and then pick them up with the tip of my brush. That's the main thing, and it also keeps my bristles clean because I am picking up the darker drawing lines, and eventually the color becomes less fresh. Okay. And let's put it on this side as well. Painting by numbers. If you've drawn the lines, if you haven't drawn the line, just paint a shape. paint what you can see on one side of the column, the other side of the column. Look for those shapes. I think this shape should be a little higher. Maybe this one come up a bit too high. Well, for now, I'll lift this one up. Okay. Maybe even use this color tiny bit of my step here. So now I will start linking the colors, maybe in this beautiful corner, how the light is falling. You can just see the patterns of the marble, and then the rest is staying in the shadow, part shadow. Okay. Just realized there is a similar pattern here in the center. I didn't quite see it because I was focusing on my shadow pattern. So maybe I will keep it reasonably, keep out of a contrast. If I will put a bit more contrast, if I will put it here around the doors, but I think I will keep it, trying to keep away from the sharp contrasts in here. Right. And let's put tiny bit of darkness under our columns, adding our violet and ochre, cadmium and violet with any other lighter colors. Okay, so let's test it out. It's harder to test if it's a dark enough color somewhere at the top, because all we see is highlights of the outer wall. But if I put a color next to my shadow, can I see a big strong contrast? Nope. So maybe that's not going to be my color for the shadow, but maybe that will be a good color for those white spaces, white triangles we sketched earlier. Maybe that will be enough light for them. Okay. Maybe even similar color could go for our patterns. If I shrunk my middle arch, I will edit more. I will add more of its widths back when we get to the darker tones. Okay, we've got another light coming here, another light coming here. We can, again, once we blocked it, we can gently change its tone. Probably in the center we can make it slightly lighter. Just looking at the shape of those so-called steps. Yeah, step ladders of a pattern. I think this side is a little wider, but for now it will be okay. And Maybe we'll spot a little light here. Okay, that was my checkup of color, which wasn't right. Okay, I can't see as much of the patterns there. That's okay. And can I use this color for some of the highlights? Anywhere else? There's a little highlight. It's kind of highlight within the shadow. That's why I'm using the same color. Okay. Oh, I've forgotten something else with my light orange, you know, for the highlights. It's that little baby gap. If you still have that color close by, bring it over. If not, and you need to mix it, maybe make a mental note to come back to that. Okay. Another shape, well, line actually we can do. Our metal brackets have the light on them. So if I were to paint any of my lighter palette color, just partially, okay, just in case if we make them wide, which I actually started doing in my previous work, and if you make them wide, you can shrink it when you start painting and the darker colors around it. Okay, and there's a little bit of light on these ones, and then it becomes a shadow. If you can't make it, if you can't, doesn't look right, it doesn't connect, don't worry about it. I think one is looking good, another one for me looks too chunky, and I think I'll probably get rid of it and work on the tone now. Okay. Right, another little bit of light we haven't done are the inner side of the arches, just on the left bottom parts and on the right bottom part of the tiny, well, the small arch. Any of our colors, cadmium yellow, a little bit of orange, they're all of a similar darkness. So any of them, palette color. I've got more ochre close on the border, so having a dab of more yellow or dab of more orangey color from cadmium red will be more welcome. So I'm going to paint the shape, almost that line which gets wider, close to the column's capital, and then it gets narrower to the point. But actually I'm going to stop it somewhere 10-11 o'clock because it will start getting more of a shadow. I will put a little bit more highlights there as well shortly, but if we look close, this couple of almost like a box, 2-3 lines of light marble is lighter than the side. It's only a very, very small area. So if I'll paint it all together, more united darkness, kind of not overly light, but I'll stretch it further into its height. That gives me the base. Okay. Perhaps a little wider than I wanted. But then I can go with my Naples yellow, a little bit of white, and put that space, make that space slightly lighter, nice and chunky strokes to make the shapes darker. Again, I'm doing it now because I know they're narrow lines, they will be harder to make more precise, but I can shrink them by painting a darker color later on. Dipping into more white. I don't think it's as light on this side, but still, if I were to put a little bit of it. Okay. It's almost like a border light. A border light. We'll see how the dark color will shape it. Excuse me. Okay. Right, now let's fill our spaces here for the shadows. I'm going to start adding a little bit more violet, but also I'd like to bring a bit more magenta so that warmth under the arches will remain and not just gonna go darker and lighter, but the color will be changing. So I'm gonna go for a bit more magenta. I'm picking up some of the lighter palette color. Could have been a bit of white, or could have been a bit of ochre with white there. Something more with violet. And I'm going to start placing it here and there on my picture to see, because the color from the bottom of the wall to the middle to the top will be changing, and all I'm interested in to make that variety. Maybe this side, I think that's might be quite nice. Maybe a tiny bit lighter, and in the middle, or maybe a little bit more contrast as I come to the edges. Okay, that's nice for the moment. And I'm going to put slightly more ochre and slightly more violet. Okay, I still need my pink, otherwise it does look like a different color. Okay, let's just mix that and see what that looks like. Tiny bit more still violet, not just change of color, but darkness as well. Okay. And let's apply it here. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have been putting too much ochre. This looks too brownish. Let's try again. Let's go for magenta, maybe yellow, and some violet. Okay, I think that's will be better. Now I just need to get to the darker tone, because my magenta has quite a bit of white in it, and minuscule amount of white addition makes it extra light. Let's have a look. Okay, that's quite dark, but maybe that dark could go inside of my arch, kind of higher ceiling area. That might be quite nice. We need a smaller brush just to get into that spot. Maybe even we'll have some pattern on our round ceiling. Maybe even some of these darker lines will be no longer darker, but that color will come in. It's a shame it's still reflect, and now we need those details. Let's see if I can raise it up a little more. Okay. So I'm just putting this color over so that stronger black is no longer dominant. Okay, and perhaps something here as well. Okay, a little wobbly line, but maybe I'll just paint the whole area and then come back to with tiny bit more tweaking it. And I'm not going to continue the same red across. Maybe I'll make it slightly more into the violet, so it's the heat of it is changing. So a tiny bit more white and then some more violet. So then it's not so red. Okay, that's almost the same as my board. Okay. But more fresher violet there. That might be quite nice mixing with my earlier color here, because I will be mingling it all together. So this is how I'm testing colors in the painting, how they will start belonging. And I need to now cover all my dark violet outlines, especially next to the light. So that's looking better now. I think I just mainly went for that violet tone. I wanted to drop this one a little lower and make this shadow a little bit wider. Okay, that's looking better. And then I'm just going to blend the colors. Okay, and I'll just blend that one. Okay, it doesn't look as light as it was, but it is still a bit lighter. I wanted to increase it gently. We only want small. We want to see it as a pattern. We don't want to see it as a three-dimensional object. It is a shadow. It is a flat surface type of shadow. But the gentle connection of light is lovely. Can paint and tweak the spaces here. Shrink some of the two wide lines. You can do as many details as you want, as little. I prefer you do less details. Okay, that's way too light. Sorry. I thought it's going to settle in, but now. Okay, I'll let it be for a moment and then add a little more darkness. Okay, now I haven't painted the top of the arch. We painted the highlight of the arch. It's moving from very light to medium to dark. So any of that similar violet and ochre, I think that will be a good change in color. Darkness we'll easily get, but the change in color in comparison to some of those purpley colors, this means that I need more ochre to make it gentler, but still need some violet to make it darker. And the darkness graduates by using those stripes, and also that light could graduate by putting tiny bit more lighter strokes down, so it's blending via pattern. Okay, can't see much contrast here. I think it's a little reflecting area as well. Okay, so violet and ochre for the second arch. And then that light could go up. Okay. Gonna try to get rid of my super dark borders by bringing the color a little closer. What we had here. So I'm just bringing that color. If it's becoming too dark, I need to keep checking how it's. Okay, that's a bit too light. Sometimes I bring a little exaggerated color to my painted segment because I know the existing color will absorb the new color I'm introducing, and that will make the balance, but sometimes it's not happening. Okay, maybe this a little extra light, just gently. Okay, that's better. I just need to do similar stuff on this side and bring this shadow back. Okay, it's too violet. Maybe to cool it off, I'll use a dab of blue or Payne's gray. Just need a tiny bit of darkness, but not violet. So black and violet, that's, I think I'm almost there. Still don't want to be making it black in appearance. I know it's quite a small area I'm working, but it's quite a central area. And almost I'm working out if I can do it this, kind of decide on my colors, decide on my shapes, how things appear in here. I can come back and develop my other areas. Okay, just add in a little light to see how that light works. Okay, I think that's good. And the snag here is my stripes moved a little far. That's better. A little light, but now they have the right widths here. I'll just move them back by accident. Okay. So I can say I can do the same stuff here, but I might just leave it out and work on a bigger scale. So maybe I'll just work on those big walls. That purple hasn't changed as much. Now I'm looking at it from a distance. I'm going to keep it for now, but I'd like to bring a bit more ochre and magenta to my violet. Let's see. If that will work. So just on the side, I'm going to try another combination of colors. In the past work, we used slightly warmer color, and that gives it a little extra appeal of the heat of the day. Okay, so if I'll place that one there and maybe just bring some of that. Yes, I think that would be good. The purple could stay at the top, and the lower part of the wall, I think I'm going to blend this warmer version of the color. There we go, I think that's better. And even perhaps warmer, orangey warmer for the lower part. It's staying dark, but maybe a little orangey warmer. That's better. And then I quite like it's going cool out. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I might have almost like my shadow is moving to that warmer orangey color. Got starting to pick up some of that violet at the top and might have a little bit more violet on this side, but still orangey browns on the lower part here. This little area where the preacher stays. Yeah, where the prayers read from the outside areas. We've got lovely connection to the darker lines. Got that sharpness. Can probably smudge some of these lines, but will protect the others from that contrast. Okay. Again, maybe next to the light, and that will go soft. And then I'm gonna make that orange to go higher and then into the violet. Might bring some of that color just tiny bit. I quite like that warmth to be supported. That's lovely. Just almost makes it a little glow. It's just how the colors suddenly worked for me. So perhaps, I know it's quite hard for you to mix the same colors quite quickly. So don't panic, just see if you can just connect your colors one way or the other at some point. Maybe just put in a bit more bolder color, similar darkness, but just gently might glow. Maybe that color will start coming maybe a little bit lower. I haven't done the shadow here either. So tiny bit more violet. And more light, white and ochre, light. I go for white and ochre instead of yellow or Naples yellow. Because it just gives me that medium darkness, the ochre. And if something need to be bolder lit up, then I'll use that. Maybe I need to tidy this area or some smaller, lower strokes, not small, lower strokes. It will come in a slightly lighter contact. Okay, perhaps that will work as well. Okay, so the shapes are getting there. I actually even like my existing background of that violet here, but I think I will place, even if I were not to paint, because I haven't painted these violets, but if I were to leave them blank, I will just dilute my color here on the wall and have a partially transparent layer. So it's more of a blend than. Okay, maybe that blend is too orangey. I need more violet, so no skipping on color mixing. Let's bring more violet there. Mhm. Okay, that's good as well. Just checking I haven't got very wobbly lines. And not as wobbly. Mhm. That's good as well. Okay, good. Right, now I've placed most of my whites, well, sorry, whites, lights in, warm lights in. I want to finish off the spaces around the doors because they're still wider and bigger than we need. The floor behind the columns. And I want to have my lovely light, that orange light, gently getting lighter, whitish towards the bottom. So I'm going to work into my highlights of the stonework. So I'm going to start again with a cleaner brush with some white. And let's bring some Naples yellow. And I will start with those darker orangey shapes because I will be lifting some of the color as I will be applying the color. So that will start giving me a mix. So that orange need to be there before we apply the light. Okay, that one is going a bit lower again. And then as I'm picking up some extra orange, I'll just mix it on the side of my palette just to kind of move it about within my brush. And then I can start adding that color anywhere in between the relief around this door. I might need a little bit more orangey color within that if it doesn't pick up enough. This means that I need to mix my cadmium yellow and cadmium red. Okay, a little extra white. Cadmium yellow is hiding under the layer of other color. Okay, so that orangey color would also need to be present. So I would like to keep tiny bit of those. Doesn't have to be pure dark lines, which we still might have, but more of a hint of them. So I want them to partially disappear, but the hint of them is there. Can't do them horizontal properly, so I'm going to do them in vertical strokes and maybe put some even lighter color on top after. So Okay, and this one doesn't look straight, so let's make sure we straighten it a bit more. Okay, that's better. Then I can put some extra whites on top, or off whites. So I'll do the same now here. I'll paint over the whole shape as a shape. I tried painting little narrow gaps, didn't work. Too much in between details. Okay, that's a shadow of my column, which I might get rid of. Okay, and maybe a little extra orangey color on the bottom here as well. Maybe even a little red. Maybe perhaps a bit too wide a stroke, but that's okay. Right, and again back to Naples yellow and some white. Let's do my second shape of light here. Let's do this side a bit more so it starts glowing now behind the column. Just blend it a bit more. That one looking okay. Now I can pick up my Naples yellow and white, maybe more into the white side, and put small strokes, horizontal strokes for that pattern of the door. That's now glowing. Hey, it could be almost dabs, dots to continue those lines. And maybe I'll squeeze in a pattern, or don't think I can do a perfect straight line. It just wouldn't last the thickness of the paint. It will just smudge. Okay, but that's better. Looks a bit of a wobbly doorway, but let's straighten it here. Okay, so that's glow from underneath, yes, from below, almost that even Egyptian type of light, yeah, the heat of Asian countries, that exotic, beautiful light. Okay, now that one's there. And I'm even going to put some of that light a little more into this pattern. Just almost like the light is receding gently, exposing a little more pattern of relief. Okay, that's perhaps getting a little more lost and found. Okay, good. Excuse me. Any other, don't want to be too zebra-like, maybe I just can connect, maybe show a bit of a width or thickness or something in there. Okay, that's good, that's good. Any bolder lights on the columns? Now we are much more stronger working with the light. I can emphasize it maybe above, quite like my highlights on the door. So maybe I'll keep the highlights in the column above and then just stretch it and just let it be. And the same from the bottom, I just stretch it just a little out. Okay, I'm happy with that. A little stroke there. And that lighter tone, probably mixed a little bit of his orange. I want to test maybe light. I've got a bit of orange on my step here. If I put a little bit of lighter tone, so have a contrast. The light is falling down, not sideways, so that's why the floor area will have a little extra light. So that's the floor of that arcade area. The door looks beautifully dark, perhaps too dark. But again, we can do a little stroke to make that changing. It might be a different, maybe almost like an open space. Like here, it's like opened up. Or if you just want to paint it all even, that's fine as well. Depends how much time we have to do the details. You can get more finer lines or a little bit more reduced ones. Now, what we're going to have here in the center, I'm just flattening the surface. But I need to connect the shadow with my column. Okay, very, very gently. This one is connecting. Okay, and this one has to have a little shadow, very narrow, just some suggestion somewhere there. There we go. That's enough. It's too dark, so that will be fine as well. And I might put a little more definition for this step, just to make it very okay. I think this is too light. I can tweak it perhaps later, but if I were to put it as a tiny darker space, that will be enough for now. Now my darker figures, perfect timing for them now. If I use the violet and Payne's grey, I think I'll use it in that warmth of the color. I can use a little bit of cadmium red there as well. And I want to make the color, the paint a bit more runny, so it's easier for me to do the stroke. Some reason I want to make them darker to help perhaps the doors to have that reference point. Now my color is very dark. What if I were to place a tiny bit of ochre, so it's not going to be almost as black as my doors, as my silhouette of them, this column as well. Okay, that's come out lighter than expected, but can always add darkness. Okay, perhaps something there. Can have the legs. Okay, and might just have a little shadow there. Don't have to see the second person's head. I can see it better than actually on the screen. Okay, that's enough. And now I'm going to use a bit of a cooler color now. My finally cool color is going to come out. I'm going to start with a little white to load my cerulean. Okay, and I'm going to exaggerate the color. This lovely cerulean, I think I need to have a smaller brush to paint it less watery, but more solid, because that will be the color for above the doors. I think that cerulean will look lovely for the pattern over the doors. So let me just place, quite like that big shape of it there as well. What I painted, a big space, that's nice. So I can go tiny bit more taller here. If you were to leave some of the orange, whatever the background we have, it almost makes it reflecting. Again, on the screen it's harder to see because it's smaller details, but a tiny bit of color is preserved. That's beautiful. Because it's a small stroke, I'm able to put thicker paint to cover what's below. Can I put anything tiny with my hair? Maybe just a hint of it, even if we can't see it as much. And I'll use a bit more cerulean and a dab of ultramarine for my dome. Just want to do a stroke of light of the stroke of color. Again, if when it all settles and I paint my floor, maybe that dome will have a tiny bit more light on the top, or maybe opposite, maybe you want to keep it as a block of a pattern. Maybe I will put something less descriptive so it doesn't take over too much attention, but it does give a lovely connection between our blues. If I'll touch up a tiny bit more dark ultramarine, can do a little shadow for our blues here as well. Makes just enough, to tiny bit of identification of tone. Okay, my column. That's nice. Even up my column shape. Just dragging the color back. Not adding color, it's enough color on the column. Okay, right. And now my cooler colors I want to bring into my floor here. So if I'll use partially diluted color, and I'm left, I didn't start painting next to my highlight. I'm painting it a little bit more midway. And also I'm going to test stronger ultramarine for some lit up area of the columns rings, base rings. Okay, that gives us that just a little hint, just that blend of light. It's quite nice, a little, maybe a vein or little suggestion of light. Previous colors, previous runny or just violet and Payne's gray, whichever they were applied, if they were runny, if they were quite dryishly applied, they do have a beautiful effect on the colors we're introducing now. Okay, this corner could have a little more lighter color. So I'm using the same mixture of cerulean and ultramarine with some white, but as I'm painting and adding color, it mixes with my violet and Payne's gray, and it gives me more of a silvery gray here. Okay, that's good. And then maybe this will have more of a shadow, and maybe this side will start having more of a light. Might just be darker version of it. Darker ultramarine. Maybe even a tiny bit more, maybe even adding with some violet. Let's have a look. No, I'm not sure about that. Looks a little too strong, but it gives me an idea that I can put some of that one higher and just letting it blend, letting it create a little shine or little marbly columns, textures. Okay, my line wobbled, so I might come back with color under the arch to tidy it up, but I think that's looking quite good. Right, that violet I'm not too sure about, so I'm going to take it off. and maybe apply stronger violet and Payne's grey. Well, not stronger, but just to compensate for it. Going to mix whatever I've got left. So it becomes lighter tone, but not jumping blue. That's better. That's good. I might use that color here to blend it as well. Okay, that's better as well. Good. Okay, right, and let's finish our floor. The blue could gently move to slightly darker version. Blue, ultramarine, diluted, and mixing with my color on the ground. And I'm going to blend it with my pale blue, so just nice soft glow. Quite like it being gentler here. And what about this area? I think I might want to go a little darker here. Okay, that's better. Maybe my glow of blue will have to go a little bit higher. I might just move it. Look quite nice on the earlier background, but actually with other colors, it might need to go higher. Okay, let's come back to earlier blue. Just maybe less light, but I do want to have that freshness of blue. Maybe it will have more close connections to the border. And our floor could have a little more light in that area. Doing some of that grid for stonework, just a little hints of it. And I think I will make my floor on the square slightly lighter. Just intuitively, if I'll almost like strategically apply that light somewhere here, definitely it takes me in now via this blue and light, and maybe that's going to be spreading a bit more. Okay, that's better. And that shadow and people. Okay. And anything else? Right, I want to do tiny bit of a change of color for my doors. So just lighter cadmium red, maybe with some ochre, just a glimpse of that red here. How it will partially smudge or tiny bit more. So it's not blackish. That's better as well. Tiny bit more ochre in that. Still on the screen looks much more dark. Okay, that's better. It's starting to come out from its borders, but I can tweak that. Okay, that's better as well. So we can see the strengths of the color and then tweakness of shapes comes in. Okay, that's good. Okay, there's smudgy lines, but that's fine as well. Got some movement. Right, I want to tweak a little more light moving into our floor. So similar light, perhaps. Oh, that's lovely. That's nice. Yeah, it's almost like with perspective is getting close to us. It's leading definitely us to that area. Okay, my figure has only one leg. It's lost the other, so that's better. Okay. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Just checking anything else. Maybe more little tweaks. They're all little, but interesting nuances to work with. That's why I'm struggling to stop. That's where that excitement of developing the piece further and further comes. Okay, a little more sharpening of my columns straightness. Right, and I think I'm going to stop. I'll have a look at my painting with fresh eyes. Maybe another day, maybe later on, and then see if anything else. Maybe part of my column could be tiny bit more dark, lighter. Still thinking that area now is a little bit blank. However, if I remember, I was spotting a similar element, but maybe much lighter in tone. If I were to put little highlights or little identification of something's there, that's already is happening in a nice way. So it doesn't overtaken my shadow, but it does add more interest point in this corner of the painting. And that's what we do. We constantly step away, give ourselves a bit of time, spot something, maybe touch it up, maybe leave it, maybe think about it before we do anything too drastic or too much. Getting the warmer color rather than whitish color rather than cadmium yellow, or even, okay, that's much better. And I might even put a little stroke of some sort connection on the other shadow. Again, just make that variety, as that's the area we're focusing in on. Might not have anything too specific here, but I think that's working quite well. Too much details here. Let's unite them together a little more. And that's quite nice as well. That light for the metal frame. That's good as well. I just need to have a bit more straighter line here. I'm happy with that. orangey better than whitish there. And this is quite this one. So just tiny little tweaks of the strokes. Right, I'm actually going to stop now before I overwork it. So thank you very much. I'm glad actually I left quite a bit of darkness at the top. I thought I'm going to put more light there, but I'm quite liking that. Otherwise, everything will be too much lit up in the area. So it's plain seeing the colors in the whole image as a group to make those final decisions. That's when we do them. So thank you very much for today, and I look forward to seeing you.